Nick Beauvais told us about how to take on a school. Our next speaker is going to tell us how to survive while going to a school. This young man graduated from Indiana University in 1971 with a major in Romance languages. He joined the John Birch Society midway through college and spent a good deal of his time in his final college years in helping other students to obtain decent research for term papers. He has served as a youth chapter leader of the John Birch Society and is himself a life member. For the past 2 years, he has helped to organize and has taught at a new private school in the Louisville, Kentucky area. He has been an active member of the Society, an active member of the Catholic Church in southern Indiana, in the southern Indiana, northern Kentucky area, and he is now working in Belmont as a general research specialist. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gavin Bizer.
Boy, you people are really great. To get up out of your beds on a Saturday morning to come listen to 3 young John Birchers talk and an old one. You must really be dedicated to the cause. And if you came here perhaps, though, with the idea that you might be able to get a few winks if you couldn't sleep last night, well, we're going to try to do otherwise for you. But we welcome you to the rally, and we hope that you have a wonderful stay here. Because of the ideals and goals that we conservatives stand for today, you well know the honor it is to take part in the rally and to speak it before you people tonight, or excuse me, this morning. This rally in many ways embodies the virtues and the goals and the ideals that we conservatives stand for. However, I think you'll all agree, though, that one does not need an event like we're enjoying this weekend in Boston to be proud to be a conservative and to be dedicated to the goals that we're fighting for. Because it becomes more of an honor every day after watching and listening to those around us who contribute to the immorality and treason which today are so fashionable. We watch in anger and in pity, and many times in horror, the actions of our friends and relatives and their children, who it seems go out of their way to help the revolution disgrace the holy name of God and to destroy his wonderful creation. And as we shake our head in disgust and in sorrow for them, we again realize that because we understand the problem and because we are trying to do something about it, we may keep our sanity while others may not. Since I've been teaching for the past 2 years at a private school, I thought this morning that I would be talking about education. And the little bit of education that I'll be talking tonight, or excuse me, I keep saying tonight, the little bit of education I'll be talking about is concerned with what's sometimes called formal education or schooling. Let's remember, or let's take the true definition of education, and it is simply the attainment of truth. And this definition applies in the classroom as well as outside of it. The system of education we have today, though, is completely contrary or completely opposite what it is supposed to be, isn't it? Today's education follows the premise that the end is not the attainment of truth, but the mere gathering and classification of facts and data. And to these, the system is limited because the truth is deliberately shut out of the mind. To know God is the true basis for knowledge. But modern secularism has banished God from the schoolroom. The first commandment today is, "Thou shalt not know the Lord thy God." And it follows that if God is not known, the resulting vacuum will be filled with something else, something human. As it is, the graven image now adored today by many is imperfect man. Karl Marx said that communism abolishes all truths, and with replacing of God by humanism, this has neatly been done. It is this type of anti-education which circulates through the modern academic body today, and it is precisely this, because of this, that the John Birch Society exists today, because we stand for truth. It is for truth, however, that many parents still send their sons and daughters to a favored college or university. The parents are comforted that their children will receive the best, and the fancy mottos in Latin and in Greek around the university seal assures them of this. At Indiana University, where I graduated, the motto was Lux et Veritas, translated as light and truth. And it sounds very noble, doesn't it? Well, I'm sure that somewhere in the past the university lived up to its motto, but it certainly doesn't now. Listening to Nick Bove's speech, I listened to him brag about having the Martin Luther King Center at his college. I'd like to tell him that we have the Kinsey Institute for Sex Research. I don't know if Martin Luther King Center beats that or not, but I think that's pretty significant. I started my college education at Indiana University in the fall of 1967, and with the fear of the population explosion fresh in my mind, I decided, like many others, that there will never be enough teachers to instruct these masses of future students, and so I decided to get into the education field. Since language was a requirement, and I had already studied Spanish for 2 years in high school, I decided to make it my major. And eventually, a close relative of Spanish, Portuguese, became my minor. Because of these 2 courses, though, and others, I saw myself getting smarter and smarter every day. That was some university I was attending. Why, only after 2 or 3 visits home, I could already see how much knowledge was filling my head. Poor Mom and Dad were set in their ways. They still held on to beliefs and principles that their parents and their grandparents believed in, but not me. There was a whole new world out there, and I was going to take it all in, and I did too. But there was one day a letter came from home, and it was a normal one except for one unusual part, and it was the line in the letter that said, "Your dad and I just joined the John Birch Society." Well, you can imagine how I felt. Attending classes with communists and socialists, and having their underground newspaper shoved in my face, and going to classes with them was bad enough, but my family. Everybody on the Bloomington campus knew the Birchers were communists. The students told me, my fellow classmates, the teachers. I knew it because my teachers told me so. And so I had to call home and tell these parents, these people that I loved, exactly what they had done. And it just so happened that Dad was home that day and he answered the phone. I tried to tell him everything about the John Birch Society, but he had the idea that he was going to tell me instead. He couldn't talk long, though, because it seemed he had something called a film showing he had to get busy with, and so we didn't get to talk very long. Poor Dad. He just wouldn't listen, and I was a college student. Within the next few days, though, I really began my education. I went to the enormous library at Indiana University and looked for many of the books the Society suggested reading. And to my amazement, many of them were not even listed in a library that boasts of its thousands and thousands of books. So I started reading the very few that were available, and noticed that they were contrary to many things the Society believed in. And so the honesty that my parents had instilled in me forced me to face the truth. The John Birch Society was correct. And so because of the conservative information I was now studying, I was able to determine which courses would be valuable and which courses would be wasteful. In the summer of 1970, I was told that if I were going to teach even at a private school, I would still have to get my teaching certificate. And so in order to receive this, I first needed a number of education courses, and it's right about now I was very glad, I was even more glad there was the John Birch Society, because this first education course that I enrolled into was about the most radical of any. But what did this course consist of? Well, for the future teachers of America, we were asked to discuss the best ways to handle the belligerent parents who objected to their children being taught sex education. We were asked to give our opinions on underground newspapers in high schools and grade schools, and of course always discussed in the context of freedom of the press. We used as a basis for a discussion a book entitled Teaching as a Subversive Activity. And the cover of my book says, a no-holds-barred assault on outdated teaching methods with dramatic proposals on how education can be made relevant to today's world. Perhaps you can't see very well from where you are, but the apple, the polished apple, on the cover of this book is not just an ordinary apple. The stem of the apple is a lit fuse, and you can decide for yourself how you want to construe that. Anyway, this is what we were supposed to have been reading in our education class, the Introduction to Education. So let me give you a few quotes that we find in this book, and you can find out exactly what I was up against. On page 37, the authors, Postman and Weingartner, put up a list of proposals that, quote, attempt to change radically the nature of the existing school environment, end quote. One of the proposals, number 15, states, quote, and I'm not making this up now, you can find this in the book, require that all graffiti accumulated in the school toilets be reproduced on large paper and be hung in the school halls. And you can find on page 157 the statement, quote, the revolution will begin to be visible when such teachers take the following steps. Number 1, eliminate all conventional tests and testing. Number 2, eliminate all courses. 3, eliminate all requirements. And 4, eliminate all full-time administrators and administrations. And the last proposal is eliminate all restrictions that confine learners to sitting still in boxes inside of boxes. Of course, you know what that means. In the last paragraph of the book we read, quote, the new education, in sum, is new because it consists of having students use the concepts most appropriate to the world in which we all must live, unquote. By the way, when I was looking around a few months back for this book, 2 of the local colleges in my area were sold out, and we're expecting new shipments. Frankly, when I was taking this course up here that we used this book in, I didn't think that the book had a chance of surviving. I didn't think that anybody would be gullible enough to accept the trash that was inside teaching as a subversive activity. And I truthfully was very surprised when I found out that they keep running short of orders in our area. I finally got my copy at Catherine Spalding College in Louisville. Another book I found is a book entitled Two Worlds of Childhood, U.S. and USSR. This book is surely one of the most important books in the field of child rearing for scientists and laymen alike to have been published in the past quarter century. And on the back cover of the book, we find the statement, the Americans and Russians have 2 different approaches to child education. The Russian school system produces better educated children and better citizens. Why? Well, after looking at some of today's education in the United States, they just might. You don't know about that, they just might. But I have the feeling, after I finished teaching in my school these past 2 years, and I look at the students that I taught on the day before I left, some of them were going to other schools, and I knew what they would be getting into, and I knew what they would be taught, and I knew what would happen to them. And it just made me mad after seeing these 2 books and some of these other trashy things that were in these college bookstores, that I came to the conclusion, and I don't know about you, but I think that if some university or college around here in the next week or so has one of these campus riots and the bookstore is burning, I sure would have second thoughts about going out to help put the fire out. Needless to say, though, I thought that if this were just the introduction to education, I wanted no part of what was going to come. And so I did not receive my teaching certification, and as a result, I could not get a job teaching at a public school. I was very fortunate, though, because just as I was graduating, a group of conservative Catholics were forming their own school to offset the brainwashing and the permissiveness that their children and friends' children were receiving at the local public and parochial schools. I've just completed 2 years at Holy Innocents School in Louisville, and ladies and gentlemen, the past 2 years were very refreshing and very rewarding. We overcame many obstacles, and we made a very good name for ourselves in the community. Our students learned the truth, and were very happy with the type of school that we set up. The 1st through the 9th grade studied Spanish, and the 7th through the 9th also studied Latin. We stressed phonics and reading and writing and arithmetic. And of course, aren't these very necessary, especially today? I have 2 clippings here that I got hold of. One of them says, on January 7th of this year, the Chicago Tribune carried a news item that 5 million people were out of work and hunting jobs who cannot read well enough to read the Help Wanted ads. And in the West Seattle Herald for June 13th, 1973, the article in this paper is entitled "School System Sued by Ex-Pupil." And it says, in a first-of-its-kind court case, the San Francisco Unified School District is being sued to the tune of $1 million in damages by a student who charges that he was graduated from high school with the ability to read at a 5th grade level. We stressed reading at our school, and we stressed phonics. We didn't stress this business about spelling cat, K-A-T, that so many people are thinking is the wonderful answer to why they can't read nowadays. I remember 2 of my friends came down from Indiana University. I graduated before they do, and they were taking an advanced level of education courses at IU. And one of their subjects was to come and investigate a private school and to see how it was run. And of course, since they knew me, they decided to come down and visit our school. I asked them after they finished going through the classes and sitting through some of them what they thought of it. And they told me, boy, are we really surprised. We didn't expect the school to be anything like this at all. And I says, well, what was it? What was so unusual about it? And they says, well, when we came down here, and of course we knew you were a Bircher, and this was a Birch school. Of course it really wasn't, but it just so happened that the board of directors was stacked with John Birch Society members. But technically it wasn't. I says, well, what was so unusual about the school? And they says, well, boy, the children were smiling. And I says, well, what's so unusual about that? And they says, well, we expected them to very rigid discipline down there, and rulers in your hands and cracking them on the knuckles. And I says, boy, you guys are just crazy. And they says, well, we really enjoyed your school. And of course this made me very happy, because I knew exactly what they thought about me and my beliefs and principles and of the John Birch Society. And so this not only helped my position as a school teacher and the type of school we set up, but also the John Birch Society too, I think. Since this was a predominantly Catholic school, we began each class with a prayer and said grace before eating lunch. However, let me add, the academic achievements were not our real objective at this school. We felt that if the students did nothing but play chess all day long, it was better than sitting in some of the other schools learning lies and becoming undisciplined. But fortunately, they did learn. And they came dressed neatly to school in uniforms, and their manners became better since the school first opened. Many teachers from other schools came out of curiosity to visit what they once thought would fall before the first year was over. But ladies and gentlemen, not only did we succeed, but we have now outgrown our present building and have moved into larger quarters. It's very obvious that we need more of these types of private schools. And if you don't get interested in what your children are learning and fight for them, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to fight against you. And you may very well lose them. God has entrusted their souls to your care, and you will be held responsible for whatever happens to them. We realize that this is going to be difficult, don't we? But if we can stick together, and if we can overcome all the obstacles that conspiracy places before us, and one day, in the not far distant future when saner days are here, we are going to present to the citizens of our country an institution of higher education that is now long overdue. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to give them John Birch University. Well, I'm glad you sound as enthused as I am about it. We're going to need all the help we can to get this started. But it won't be easy to start our university, and once started, we make no promises to produce a generation of Washingtons, or Shakespeares, or Caldwells, or Welshes. For this is not the responsibility of a university. Our responsibility, rather, will be in promoting the type of atmosphere in which such people thrive. Our aim is at raising the intellectual tone of society and at purifying and cultivating the public taste, and at supplying true principles to popular enthusiasm. If John Birch University can accomplish this, then its reputation and quality will be as totally American as the Statue of Liberty and the Concord Bridge. For this will be our trophy, the result of a battle forever reminding the world that we too are now worthy to stand beside those persons who fought so bravely in our first war for independence. For we are now involved in a second war for independence. And those of you who sit before me tonight are in the first ranks of this battle unit. And so to all of you, I give my thanks and my admiration. And be proud, please, because you're part of a wonderful movement. And with your help, we're going to provide less government and more responsibility in a better world. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin.